Hello, everyone, and welcome back to COM 322 Argumentation. First, I have to give you an apology and a thank you. An apology for how delayed this video is, and a thank you to, there were a couple of you who emailed me and asked me about this week's assignment and what was going on with it, which of course tipped me off to, you don't have the video. As I told you in the beginning of this semester, which was literally last week, there are oftentimes problems with Blackboard and with its willingness to post things when it's supposed to, and its willingness to make sure that video links get to you. And I try to triple dip and get these things to you, and it sometimes just fails spectacularly, as it did this week. And I teach 3 classes. You are one of 3 classes that I had problems with, so it's not you, it's me, or it's not me, it's Blackboard. I'm not really sure. I'm going to blame everybody but me and you, because it's neither of our fault, I don't believe. But hopefully you'll forgive me for that. And starting next week, if you don't have a video by Tuesday, I would like you guys to let me know. Scream and shout. Say, hey, it's not up. Where is it? And I'll make sure that I get it up, because it should have been up that early this week. So apologies for the delay. That said, chapter 2 is not that difficult to get through, and I'm sure that you don't need a very specific, detailed rehashing of the entire chapter. But I do want to make sure that we understand the fundamental difference in what chapter 2 talks about between the rational world paradigm and the narrative paradigm. Because when it comes to argument, people often mistake what we mean by terms like evidence or grounds or warrant. And we're going to get to those later, although you may have heard those terms before in more detail. Today, what we really want to focus on is, as the book calls it, the foundational ideas of argument. Arguments tend to come from one of 2 places, which tend to be representative of one of 2 paradigms. The rational world paradigm is the paradigm that we are sort of born into. It is the paradigm of linear thought, of rational thinking, of A plus B equals C, 1 and 1 makes 2, and so on. The predictable, that the end result of what we get must be true because the progression there follows as such. The prime example of this is probably the deductive argument known as a syllogism. For those of you who don't know what a syllogism is a 3-part proof that a statement is true. The most famous syllogism is all men are mortal, which is a major premise. It is the major premise being something we already know and agree upon, okay? Socrates is a man. That is the practical or specific application of that agreed upon major premise. So it's known as the minor premise. And the conclusion, or the therefore, it must be true that Socrates is mortal. Okay, that is the rational world paradigm in a nutshell. It's the way that we do scientific research when you hear all the statistics about a new drug that's on the market, or if you're reading about how the market is behaving. We get those statements from the linear thinking of deductive and inductive reasoning that must lead to the conclusion. And when I say it must lead to the conclusion, that means that the conclusion would be understood by everybody if they come at it from the rational world paradigm. Okay, I hope that helps. That's generally speaking the way that we are raised. We are raised to believe that all argument must follow the rational world paradigm, which means that it must have statistics, or what we like to refer to as facts, which we will talk about the meaning of that term later on in the semester. But the idea that you have to have hard, like somehow validated statistics, numbers behind an argument in order for it to function as evidence. Now, the reason why I bring that specific example up is because the opposite of the rational world paradigm Okay, a lot of people say it's the opposite. It's not really the opposite. It's just another way of thinking about it, actually. So the rational world paradigm is what we sort of were born into. It's what culturally exists, right? The narrative paradigm tries to take it a little bit differently. And it suggests that all evidence, instead of it being statistics and numbers and found through scientific research, is based in storytelling, in narrative. So, for example, when we talk about common sense, what are we talking about? We're talking about stories that were handed down culturally from one generation to the next based on the experiences of those previous generations. So those come from our ancestors who had experiences such as chicken noodle soup helps you feel better. Does it? Now, really? Most people call this a myth or an old wives' tale or a truism or some other term that does not indicate that it must be true. That's the conclusion we must have drawn. Here's why. It's because it's a story. And also because, factually speaking, chicken noodle soup does not cure anything, okay? What it does is make you feel better. Okay, great. So it's still true. Chicken noodle soup is good for you when you're sick. It helps you feel better. That is true. They have actually gone and scientifically proven this to be true. How? Well, protein, chicken, makes you feel like you've got more energy, right? The carbohydrates give you an immediate energy. So the noodles give you that feeling like you could get up and get moving if you needed to. The herbs help to open your sinuses, so that you are able to breathe more easily, you're able to blow your nose more easily, and all of the congestion can work itself out a little bit. And then finally, the salt. Salt just makes you feel better, which is why a lot of us, when we were growing up, our moms gave us, or our dads, our parents, our grandparents, whoever was around, brothers and sisters in some cases, gave us saltine crackers with our chicken noodle soup. And oftentimes, I don't know about you, but in my day, it was ginger ale. That's what you drank. Orange juice and ginger ale. And if you drank those, you would feel better because ginger ale helps ease your stomach. And if you know anything about stomach problems, then you know ginger is very soothing to the stomach. So there is a rational reason why chicken noodle soup helps us to feel better. But from the narrative paradigm, we don't need to know all of those rationalizations. We don't need a scientific study because we've heard the story. And so many people tell this story, right? The narrative is shared through generations, across cultures, and the idea of a soup of some sort, that heat helping you to feel better, the salt helping you to feel better, the protein giving you energy, the carbohydrates giving you energy, the herbs sort of helping to open up your sinuses and your nasal passages. It's all true. Okay. So we know it's true because so many people have experienced it and shared that story. And that's the narrative paradigm. And the shared story that gets, repeated over time, the more the story gets repeated, the more people share in that story, the more likely the conclusion is true. And so I don't know about you, but I'm one of those people, and there's a lot of these people in the world based on my experience. I'm one of those people that, like, if there's I'm diabetic, okay, so I mean, way too much information for you right there, but anytime I take a new drug, if there's like a 2% chance of a side effect, I get it. I've had a tumor removed once where they said there was a less than 5% chance that it would return. It returned within 2 years. I had my tonsils taken out when I was 21. Those don't usually recur. Mine grew back by the time I was 30. So, I guess I'm very regenerative, let's put it that way. But I always get the side effects. And so oftentimes I'll tell my doctor, don't tell me what the side effects are, because psychosomatically I might just make them happen. But it usually happens that even in the rarest case, I get that one time I'm that person who would report a side effect that was just bizarre. And so I don't discount one or two narratives, kind of like we do when we're doing scientific research. We say those are the outliers, right? Only 2% have this reaction. Only 1% respond in a negative way, and so on. We take our chances. But the narrative paradigm would suggest that you should listen to all of the stories, including the outliers, and then come to your conclusion about, the argument that's being made. Now, what is that argument? What is that conclusion? What is that statement that we're making? I refer to it as the argument. It is nothing more than our opinion of what we believe, whatever evidence we have says. And so when people say to me, blah, 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 and I say, why do you think that? And they say, it's just my opinion. That's not helpful in any way, shape, or form to anybody, because your opinion must be based in something. And if it's just, I just want to think that way, well, I guess that's valid, but it's not exactly going to be the most drawn conclusion on a mass scale. And so if you're the only one who thinks that, I can't judge the validity of that except in your own personal experience. Opinions generally are based in evidence. We just don't think about it as being evidence. I feel this way because it's how my parents raised me. It was what I was exposed to the most, and I haven't heard a good counter to my opinion. Therefore, my opinion stands. Okay, I'm willing to work with that. We can work with that. Any argument, whether you think it's an opinion or a fact, can be debated. And that's what this class is going to be teaching you. And that's not to say that you should start like really negative arguments with people all the time, or that you should be derivative and, debate everything. My mother thinks that I argue with everything. I don't. I'm just very curious about how she comes to some of her crazy conclusions. That's all I'm saying. So understanding how arguments get built is what this class is about. It's not just about being able to debate. It's not just about understanding the structure of argument. It's about understanding where that argument comes from. So the next time somebody asks your opinion on something and you give it and they say why, you may not be quite as defensive in saying, because that's my opinion, that's just how I feel. You may actually have a reason for it, and it is probably a perfectly valid one. So that's what chapter 2 is all about. I hope you understand the difference between those two. And if you have any questions or comments, let me know about it. I'm actually going to put up a discussion board for you, but it's going to be a bridge between chapter 2 and chapter 3 as we move into next week. And it won't be due until next week on Friday. I always give you guys like a week to do those. So I will do that again. Keep reading. If you need anything, let me know. And again, if you don't have something from me, I don't know why I'm saying this on a video, because if you have it by Tuesday, then you don't need to email me. I'm going to find a way to make sure that you guys know, to let me know if you haven't heard from me, because, Blackboard doesn't tell me such things. I hope you have a heck of a weekend. I will see you guys on the other side of it.